press journalists in this country remain the least trusted in the whole of Europe. And if you ask, the polls show that if you ask the British public, who do you trust? They trust journalists even less than they trust estate agents or politicians.
So I want to talk about the post-Brexit psychology, because it's become apparent that in this post-Brexit reality, there are different ways of thinking about what is going on. And it's having a big impact on politics because people aren't dealing with the real source of the pain and problems that we're having, and they're looking for other scapegoats. But it occurred to me that the largest group of people want to rejoin the European Union. Polling shows us that 60% plus want to rejoin the European Union. About 11%, apparently, is the latest polling, see Brexit as a success. More people in UK believe in ghosts than the people that believe Brexit has been a success, which is quite a feat, really. Apparently, I think it's 27% believe in ghosts and only 11% think that Brexit has been a success. And I would think that as only 11% believe that Brexit is a success, there would be a huge majority, as in 85% wanting to rejoin the European Union. But there's something stopping the 60% from going up to 80%, 85%. And it's psychology. It's the psychology around Brexit that reminds me of what happened when my husband bought some dodgy knives and saucepans off a salesman. And as soon as I used them, the knives broke. As soon as I put the saucepans on the heat, the handles melted. And that is Brexit. Brexit was sold as being something amazing. It was all full of lies. And it didn't just not deliver, it actually delivered the polar opposite of what people voted for. So if they'd gone out and told the truth and said, guys, vote for leave, vote leave, and we will make sure that immigration goes up by over 4 times. And not only that, we'll lose our position in the Dublin Agreement, which means that we get less asylum seekers than many of the other European nations. Let's vote to leave and make all of those things go up immeasurably, 4 times. It's absolutely clear that many of the Brexit voters wouldn't have voted Brexit if they told the truth about that. And they said food would be cheaper. Of course, it's not, it's more expensive. Energy is more expensive because we left the EU internal energy market. Inflation is sticky, as they call it. It's permanent. And the reason it's permanent is because of Brexit, because we've got trade barriers between us and our biggest market. So these people that believed the liars, they don't want to, like my husband with the dodgy knives and the dodgy saucepans, they don't want to actually look at the shame of what has happened, that they've been missold this reality. And so they believe that we have to live with it and that we shouldn't moan about it and we shouldn't talk about it and we shouldn't campaign to get rid of it. We should just live with it. I mean, it's like voting for a serious illness and then saying, I'm not going to go to the doctor because I voted for it. You just couldn't make it up. And the other thing they do is say, well, things are bad now and things are really bad in Britain, but it's not as bad as it is in Germany and France. Things are really bad there. And so we're actually better off out. And that is the other argument that they put in here. And it is extraordinary. And I would say it's a bit like voting to set your house on fire and then say, well, because I voted for it, I won't call 999 and bring the fire brigade to put the fire out. And then because I talk about it and say, well, Brexit is doing this and Brexit is the biggest sacrificial lamb of Brexit is food. And it's not just about farmers, of course, but it is farmers who feed you, but it is food, and food is your health. And the biggest sacrificial lamb of Brexit is food and food security. As the world is becoming more and more dangerous, we are letting go of our food security. And that is taking us back to what we were like before the last war, when we didn't have enough food security and we nearly starved. But we did have an empire, so we could actually control the food supplies that came here. We're no longer in that position. And there is no sensible joined up food plan at all for this country. And then other people, and this is something that Remainers are guilty of, say, well, the farmers, they voted for it. Well, the farmers didn't all vote for Brexit. And even if they did, does it matter? The train drivers actually all voted for Brexit. I think most of them did, because all of the train unions said that the railways will be nationalised if we leave the European Union. Again, that was not true, because there's nationalised railways in other European countries.
Rights that the TUC now fears are going to be abolished by legislation being pursued by the current government as a direct consequence of the Brexit you supported.
Well, they're a direct consequence of having this government.
You can't have one without the other. Well, it's this government plus Brexit. Take away Brexit, exactly. The government couldn't do this.
Exactly. You're absolutely right. And
I know.
It's a political decision that the government we have has made.
You've handed them it's just like they're going to go and shoot your dog, but you've handed them the gun.
Not quite.
Yeah.
No, it's not quite like that,
well, it is,
James, because if we'd voted for a different government, which I campaigned for, we wouldn't be making these changes, and a future government is free to make legislative changes that it wants and could enhance what we do, and can indeed nationalise public sector services, which you cannot do inside the European Union. You have to have liberalisation.
Nobody blames the train drivers, and yet it is the farmers. And time again, I get comments saying, well, I've got no sympathy for you farmers, you voted for it. It is true that the farming vote has been looked at by a university, an agricultural university, and they have worked out that about 53% of farmers voted Brexit. 55% of men voted Brexit, and the older they were, the more likely they were to vote Brexit. And it's true that most farmers are aged 60 plus. So actually the farming vote was below the national average. So these things are important to remember, because the false narratives that are put on us by the media. And the media is a powerful corporation. Supermarkets are powerful corporations. And really what this situation that we're in is a war between us, the people, and the powerful corporations who control our governments more and more than they used to. Governments work for them, not for us. Political parties work for them because they believe that the sun decides who becomes Prime Minister by blowing smoke out of the chimney. And that is where the power is controlled. And this week, Hugh Grant did an interview with ITV, and he absolutely got to the core of the issue. And this is what we should remember. So it isn't about being angry with Remainers talking about Brexit, or Brexit voters blaming Remainers for Brexit not being delivered, or all of these things are a distraction. Actually, what it is about is global large corporations wanting to deliver what they want for their own means, and they don't want to be concerned with the realities of what people need and what governments have to provide. And they don't want to pay tax, and they don't want to be responsible for any of those things. They want to have everything privatised because they think that that is the way things work. But it can't work, because private industry, everything privatised, means that there's no public system to help the weakest.
There are lots of things about you, but once you got a bone,
well,
you don't let it go.
I don't let it go. And these people, I don't wish to sound corny, but this campaign and the friends I've made and the comrades I've established, I will never let down. And this is, I feel like, this is probably the stuff in my life I'm most proud of having done, much more so than any film. And the older and angrier I get generally, I just become convinced that government has to stand up to protect the public from abuses of power from very, very powerful corporations, whether it's newspaper corporations, big tech, big food. That's what they're there for. And yet time and time again we watch them roll over under the influence of lobbyists. And I think we've got to fight. And if the Labour Party, here we are at the Labour Party conference, if the Labour Party is for anything, it's for doing that. And I'm very, very disappointed that we have a Prime Minister who doesn't seem to be interested in protecting the public from abuse from huge corporations. So I would say to Keir Starmer, don't give me that. I know the reason why you are sitting down with Lachlan Murdoch. I know the reason you are hiring David Dinsmore as your head of communications, who was the editor of the Scottish Sun when they published Gordon Brown's kids' medical records. I know why you're doing it. You think it's politically expedient. You think it's good for your career. You think it's good for your party. You're wrong, but that's what you think. And I would say, I suggest to you, it's time to govern rather than do politics, and it's time to be a statesman rather than a politician.
My final question: no one can fault you for your commitment to something once you get your teeth into it.
Yeah.
As we said, you've not given up and you've kept going, and it's been pretty painful for you. Not as painful as for some of the other victims, I'm sure you'd say, but it's not been particularly easy. Do you feel in your heart of hearts that this is now a lost cause? Or do you feel there is still a chance that you'll get what you feel the victims deserve?
Well, you have to keep holding their feet to the fire. That's one thing I've discovered. I knew nothing about politics 14 years ago. Now I know quite a lot. And I'm afraid my conclusion is that very little is going to happen out of principle. It'll only happen if you hold their feet to the fire and say the consequences of not doing this are going to be worse than doing it. So that's what I'm doing right here.
Last question on British politics.
Yeah.
You'd never be a politician.
I have fantasized about it from time to time, but I'm told reliably by my friends that I'm unelectable.
Well, I don't agree with Hugh Grant's friends. I think he's totally electable. He's got the right approach to what government should be doing, which is managing the country for the citizens, not for the corporations. And I can only hope that more and more people wake up to the fact that Brexit was missold, the same as the dodgy knives and the saucepans. And so why would you go back to the dodgy salesman and believe what they say about leaving the ECHR? That is a disaster. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to comment below, and if you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing for more content about food, farming, and a fair bit of Brexit.